How are we doing today? I hope we're doing very, very well. We are doing our next Patreon watch-along right now. Now, this is going to be a watch-along for my very, very favorite movie. That's right, no hyperbole, no wiggling of truth. We're going to watch Fight Club. Now, this movie is one of the most, I'd say misunderstood is the wrong connotation, but a lot of people misinterpret it wrong and then they're louder, and that causes a lot of problems for fans of the movie that see it as the fable that it is. Now, this movie is a myriad of things. It is a movie about anti-consumerism, it is a movie about toxic masculinity, it is a movie about Generation X dealing with the ramifications of their fathers, it is a movie about fathers, it is a movie about 100 different things, it is a theological study, it is a commentary on everything that popular society is and isn't. It's so many things. And I feel like the problem with it is a lot of people think it's a movie about gratuitous violence and it's a movie about blowing things up and it's a movie about mayhem. The beauty of this movie, to me, is that the coolest guy in cinema is the villain. All of the negative things about Tyler Durden aren't... They're idolized incorrectly, and they're idealized incorrectly. So it's a fascinating journey for me. I, to this day, still have a Tyler Durden email because I've seen him from both the young, ignorant standpoint and then grew up to realize he was, in many ways, the villain of the story. I'm going to be talking about all of that as we watch, as well as talking about all of the female imagery in this film that I feel like don't get discussed enough. Like the fact that the savior in the film is often the female, like Marla saves and Bob's breasts save and then smother, and there's a lot of commentary on mothers in the film that I find fascinating, and a lot of this is broad strokes essays that you can find all over the internet. But before we get going, I gotta recommend, there is a book detailing so many different interpretations of this very fable. Is this a grown-up Calvin and Hobbes? Is this a story retelling experiences of American Beauty or The Wall? There's literally essays from PhD candidates to just movie reviewers to anybody in this book. I'd been rereading it for this show. I got about halfway and decided, hey, I should probably not just spout what's in a book. I want this book to be read, so I don't want to just, take these people's ideas. I want to give my own ideas while we're watching it. So do check out this book. It is incredible. It's called You Do Not Talk About Fight Club. We're going to start it in just a minute. We did a Deadpool watch-along last month, and I learned a valuable lesson. No matter how low the volume is, if the powers that be at Fox can hear anything, they will take down your video. So after a full 2-hour watch-along, which was a lot of fun, we had a few hundred views in the house, and then only those people ever got to see it. So we're gonna have to re-record another watch-along. I have learned a lesson. Now, inexplicably, my TV and PS4 Blu-ray was not happening with my headphones, so I've got a plugged-in headphone to my laptop, and I'm gonna be watching this on Hulu, even though I own the Blu-ray. So thankfully, this is a movie that is streaming, so everyone that is at home, if you have Hulu, that is the best case scenario to watch it. But I want to say a little bit of my clout towards Fight Club. I saw this movie when I was 11, probably too young. I've had a Tyler Durden email since 13, 14, and I've met Chuck a bunch of times, and he usually only signs books, or now he only signs books, but I got him to sign my Criterion double DVD, and this is one of my babies. This is I Am Coy's DVD from Chuck Palahniuk. This is my pride and joy. I love this thing. Michael McCarstle, who is running this very show, is in the live chat telling us it is on HBO Max. I was just about to bring up Michael McCarstle. How you doing, man? This video is a Patreon watch-along, so that means that there is a tier in my Patreon where you sponsor a watch-along. I picked the movie, but Michael and I picked the movie, we team up. It's just got to be something that I have enough information about to comment on. It's not fun to watch a movie I've never seen with me, where it's 2 hours of me being silent, so we kind of back and forth go over the movie. Last time he picked Deadpool. This time we picked Fight Club. Very excited to watch this movie with Michael, and thank Michael in the chat. Michael McCarstle is the reason this can exist. I also want to say, this is another of my pride and joys. This is a very, very limited edition Bible of Fight Club. This is a first printing hardcover of Fight Club. Fight Club is inside, but this is a stunning, impossible edition. It is, I don't open it often. This is my baby. I don't even touch it, but this is from Chuck. Let's see if we can get it so you can see it. To me, and a friend of mine, Matt Bennett, got this for me a while ago, so thank you, Matt Bennett, for this amazing gift, and I treasure it like nothing else. A Chuck Palahniuk 2 Coy signed. I think there's only like 500 of these. This is an impossibly limited edition of Fight Club, and it is my actual baby. So Fight Club is very, very much my shit. I could not possibly love it more. It is my #1 movie, and while we watch it, I will dive into exactly why this movie is everything to me. It is directed by David Fincher. It is written by Andrew Kevin Walker, as well as obviously Chuck Palahniuk having a lot of insight into the film. I'm excited. You guys ready? And also, before we dive in, I'm gonna enjoy a beer. Now, I am currently teaming up with this company called Tavour. Tavour, Tavour, like tavern and devour. It is a beer company that gathers craft beers from all over and sends them directly to you. So it is unsafe. It is currently July of 2020 whenever you're watching this, and it is not the safest to go outside. So don't risk going to a bar if they're open. They shouldn't be. Don't risk going to the liquor store if you don't have to, and don't risk drinking shitty beer because Coors and Bud, frankly, they're good to hydrate, but they're not beers, in my opinion, very humbly. But craft beers from independent breweries, you're helping out individuals, you're helping out breweries that need it now more than ever. And Tavour, if you order and use the code COY10, 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 you get $10 off after you order $25. So $10 off of beer is like, I'm so proud of that. Like, you have no idea, as a Bostonian, as a beer drinker, as an Irishman, having a discount code for beer. So download the Tavour app, use the code COY10, get $10 off after $25, and I'm doing a show right after this. We are doing 2 streams today. We are doing a double feature. We're going right from this into comic books and craft beer. We're going to talk more beer. So this is my first beer of the night, and there's going to be a couple more. This is from the Chuckanut Brewery. Chuckanut, Chuckanut Brewery. It is a Vienna-style lager. I am very much a lager man. Let's see how this thing goes. It is lightly malty. Ooh, it's got a nice, like, tannin to the end of it. It's really smooth. It's like a super smooth beer. It's a great, like, summer drinking beer. That's really crisp and nice. That's a good lager. All right, so that is a Vienna lager from Chuckanut Brewery. Thank you to them. Thank you to Tavour. Let's watch Fight Club. All right, guys, I'm real excited. I'm going to press play in 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. It's going to load. So this is why I like Blu-rays, because I have more control. But we are loading. Okay, HBO logo. 4 seconds, 5 seconds, 6 seconds, graphic violence, nudity, adult content. So this is clearly the HBO version of Fight Club. Okay, anyone watching at home, it is 7 minutes and 40 seconds. We have the 20th Century Fox logo, and I'll let you know when that ends. That's going to be ending in just a second, so you can cue up to that ending. We have music swelling. Thank you to 20th Century Fox for taking a chance and making this insane film. This movie did not originally do all that well, so I love the cult following it gained. This came out October 15th, 1999, and then it found a hell of a following, but it did not do that well in theaters. David Fincher was not as well known as he is now. Brad Pitt and Edward Norton couldn't get as many butts in seats as I wish it had, but now it has a hell of a cult following. All right. The Dust Brothers score on this movie is amazing. I run to this sometimes, and it's hella motivating, and it's a really inspired time. I love, it's a spoiler for 20 seconds from now, but I love that this movie kind of extrapolates through CGI out from the micro to the macro, exploding into the film, which is this beautiful parallel to the actual psychology behind the film, and like the starting in a brain, giving away the ending. This is going to be spoilers for Fight Club. Okay. Starting in a brain with a man who is having a mental lapse in thinking someone isn't real. We're literally starting where Tyler Durden's seed is planted in a brain and then expanding outward, and it gives away the ending. Like, when you see the ending and watch the opening credits, you're like, I love this movie so very much. All right. Live chat. Hello, everyone. I gotta kill that. Hello everyone in the chat. I hope you were doing very well. I am so excited you're here. Oh, I lost audio. Okay, we're back. Okay, so now we have left the CGI, and now we just have a crazy, crazy focus lens. David Fincher is so good at using his zooms, and his credits are usually amazing. Edward Norton, everybody talks about Brad Pitt's performance in this, but Edward Norton as the narrator, or Jack, or Cornelius, whatever you want to call him. also love, David Fincher doesn't like to show people's eyes too clearly, so I love the darkness in all the characters. I love his framing. The DP in this film did an exceptional job. Every line of dialogue in this opening is instantly quotable, and 90% of this movie is. Again, David Fincher using CGI to augment lacing shots. So nowadays, people use these long takes as flair, but David Fincher, since 97, this came out in 99, he's stitching different shots together and then using CGI to zoom through it. I know this because Tyler knows this. Within a minute, we know the twist if you've seen the movie. So, we get the only time he can cry, the only time he can sleep is a feminine energy. Bitch tits in this case. Breasts are a positive. And the female element of this movie, it's super understated. It's a very masculine film, but the savior idea of maternal energy is fascinating because then it turns from positive to smothering when he becomes violent, and that's fascinating to me. Also, Meatloaf in this film. Can we just give Meatloaf some love in this film? The way you think of gods is big. Starbucks is rumored to be in every single shot in this film. There is a Starbucks cup or a Starbucks logo. David Fincher has Easter egged, well before Marvel, Starbucks insanity. Also, we got our first Tyler Durden flash just now. I also don't think he's wrong. It will be the corporations that name space. The cornflower blue tie. Chuck Palahniuk puts cornflower blue in nearly all of his books. Cornflower blue is an icon of Chuck Palahniuk's writing. I love the muted color palette David Fincher often uses, but especially in this office where everything is this muted white pasty, this world. This is one of the things that turned me off from accounting, or like doing any cube job. The masturbation commentary on what we've become with consumerism starting here is beautiful. The porn double spread being an IKEA spread. How many of us have read an IKEA magazine and drooled over it? I absolutely have. I think it's part of adulthood. This entire sequence is what it's like when you move, and consumerism is such a part of our culture. This is such a fascinating commentary. I also want that yin-yang table, so I'm part of the problem. What a beautiful use of special effects. What beautiful, subtle... it's... God, I love this movie. Generation X, it's such a numb generation in commentary and pop culture, and watching this now while Generation Z and Millennials are going through such a different resurgence, this movie's about the fact that Generation X didn't have a great war, they didn't have a plague, and now we're living in a plague, so watching this right now is gonna be interesting. If anyone hasn't read the book, by the end of the watch along, I'm going to talk about the ending of the book versus the movie, and they're different. So spoilers for the book, but we're not going to get that until the third act. Another Tyler Durden. Also, this moment of inspiration. I like that Tyler accelerates the closer he is to redemption, the closer he is to having these moments of clarity, and using anguish and using that release to get sleep is, I feel like, more common than society talks about. The imagery of support groups and the asymmetrical one-sided weight the frame takes in all of the support groups, there's a similar feel, and I really, when I read the book after watching the movie, it reframed that for me in such an interesting way. I highly recommend you read the book. I definitely check out Chuck Palahniuk's Fight Club. This is one of my favorite lit movies, the lighting in this film. And check out the Blu-ray transfer. The Blu-ray transfer captures pores and uses the light appropriately. The DVD's fine, but the Blu-ray, this is one of the movies that's really worth a 4K transfer. If you can afford it, get the 4K HD, because the lighting in this film is second to none, in my opinion. There he is, Bob. His name is Robert Paulson. Now, Chuck Palahniuk, the man, was actually obsessed with bodybuilding. I've met him 6 or 7 times, and 3 of the times he was like a huge man. The other 4 times he was also a big guy, but 3 of those times he was like, you know, a cartoon of bodybuilder. And so the commentary on bodybuilding actually got him involved in that world. He got his butt kicked, which inspired him to write Fight Club. And the idea that the rush of violence, you know, that shaped a lot of the rest of the narrative of the film. But the movie's not about the fighting aspect, it's about the escapism, in my opinion, and about what it means to be a man. And the bodybuilding aspect actually changed Chuck Palahniuk's life, and he's got a book called Stranger Than Fiction. That's a non-fiction book about where his stories come from and his writing process and his inspirations for a lot of his major works. And I've read everything Chuck's done except for the last 3 or 4 years. I haven't been able to read the most recent ones, but comic books took over. But his books are all dark, depraved, fascinating, and they're consistently good. There's a few that are off, but more often than not, he's brilliant. And of course, all this is just my opinion. I'm sure there are books of Chuck's that I don't dig that other people do. He's an impossibly consistent writer. Losing All Hope is Freedom, introduced very early on. Again, a movie that's almost scripture. Like the dialogue is such credos. These are words you can live by. These are motivational in the nihilistic perspective concepts. Also, I've had this shirt since high school, and I found it to wear today, and I was very excited that I could find it. I have this, and I have a Calvin Klein logo, but it's Tyler Durden. It says TD, but it's in the Calvin Klein font since high school. Another support group. The editing here is top-notch. Again, I don't know how I would have marketed this movie, but Fox could not find a market for it, and now it's one of the biggest cult films of all time. And arguably, it just gets more and more relevant every year. I've never been to a support group, but they paint such a clear picture. You can smell the air, you can taste it, and that's the combination of Fincher and the DP. There's an incredible... the Pixies, by the way, I keep seeing in the live chat, the Pixies, powerful band. But there's a great mix of White Ball of Healing Light that the Dust Brothers did with quotes from this film, and it's on the soundtrack, and it's one of the most empowering, like, get those last reps in, bruh. Also, I've definitely been in pain and thought of my cave. This movie's influenced even my subconscious. And that was some of the first CGI animal work I'd seen in 1999. We are currently at timestamp 11:22, Mom. My mom's in the live chat. Send her some love. Mr. Cornelius is walking down the street after his most recent support group, and now we're back to Bob. Now, the use of other people's pain in order to make yourself feel better is a common trope in Chuck's work, but I really love the use of Marla here, that the fraud reflects his fraud, and therefore he doesn't get the high, he doesn't get the endorphin rush, he doesn't get the dopamine, he doesn't get the freedom, and it makes sense because he is called out. I love what Atticus Ross and Trent Reznor have done with the scores, but what the Dust Brothers do, if you listen to the sound design, not just the score, but the sound design work through all of these sequences, it's almost a white noise with more aggression. It's like an industrial white noise, and it really gets under your skin, and it affects the way you see even the frame and the way you remember these things. You can remember, like, this shot of Marla that's so iconic. You can feel the way you felt, in part because of the sound design working its way into your subconscious. This movie is shot perfectly. So I saw this, like I said, when it first came out. I was 11. To this day, David Fincher is still my favorite director. 20 years, favorite director. I don't know if any of you have ever had insomnia, but it is crippling. The way this film is shot up until Fight Club is there's this dullness to it, and like the saturation is off, and that's often when you're that fatigued what the world feels like. So they kind of shift the darkness after he's unsuccessful at the support groups back to how the movie opened. And notice the lack of eyes, notice the lack of eye contact. There's a removal of humanity at play that maintains until we get to the brotherhood of Fight Club and until Project Mayhem and all those things. There's a separation. One of my favorite Halloween costumes I've ever seen is someone dressed like Chloe and had it down to the T, and I was so impressed with the detail work, and that is the magic of Los Angeles. Someone dressed as a character with 5 very powerful lines, but 5 lines in a movie from '99, and I was like... The sound design here mirroring, like Gregorian chants, and you've got your trying to zen out happy place, and it's not working, and we've got Marla just in the background. And now Marla has become his power animal. I love Marla smoking in cancer groups. It is the detail work in the book and the movie, just the consistent puffs of smoke. Also, if you notice in the background of some of these scenes, members that will later join Fight Club, because the word gets out in these groups, you can see members of Fight Club in like civilian wardrobe in some of the backgrounds of these scenes. She doesn't have testicles either. This movie only has an 8.8 on IMDb. Everyone watching this, go fix that. Give it a 10. Balance it out. It should be like a 9.9. And that is a line I think about almost a daily basis. I talk for a living, I have conversations for a living, and it's fascinating the moment where you engage with someone and suddenly they're not waiting for their turn to speak. Finding the moment where someone's listening instead of waiting for their turn to speak is when your job is going well. It's when, my job specifically, but when you're engaged and when that's a real moment. It's important in all relationships, finding the moment. You'll notice Marla's makeup is always just awful. The makeup design, like the person applying the makeup, her makeup artist, Helena Bonham Carter insisted she do it with her left hand, so it would be as messy and messed up as Marla would apply it, because she is Marla Singer. Arguing over parasites and brain dementia. This is the kind of humor that is really hard to convince people is funny, I find. Like, this pitch black humor is... I think this is one of the funniest scripts, but it's not like, haha, funny. It's like, ooh, feel that. Experience that funny. This and In Bruges, I find, are two of the darkest comedies that I really think are hard to convince people, but if they get that kind of humor, all the power to them. I want bowel cancer. And weirdly, even from the beginning, this is probably not a good sign of my opinion on relationships, but they're adorable from the jump. The stunt drivers, the stunt cars, were terrified because Helena Bonham Carter was so bold. You can actually hear the clank of the buttons on her jacket hitting the cars. Like, that's not added in. That's how close those cars were to her. And we never know. What's funny is Jack was trademarked by 20th Century Fox, so when Chuck Palahniuk wrote Fight Club 2, the comic book adaptation, there's a Fight Club 2 and 3, he had to change Jack, the narrator, he couldn't use Jack, so now it's Cornelius officially. So his name in the comics is canon as Cornelius. In the film, the script is labeled him as Jack. Anyone that's ever had jet lag, this whole sequence is too real. So the first time we see Tyler Durden, he's literally saying if you wake up at a different time, at a different place, could you wake up a different person? The clues in this. Brad Pitt is in this next sequence. He's on the far right-hand corner as a waiter. So theoretically, Brad Pitt incepted the concept of Tyler Durden in that moment as what Tyler might appear as. Because they say you never imagine a face you haven't seen. Even in your dreams, you've seen all those faces. So he's seeing him in his waking life already. That's going to become how he sees Tyler as he sleeps. All of these facts are researched. All of the numbers are true as of when Chuck wrote this book. Yeah. Also, you'll notice in dark comedy, like in this example, usually when characters are laughing, it's not funny. But when it's played to dryness, that's the humor in it. And now we meet one of my favorite characters, moments away, meet one of my favorite characters in the history of film. Another image along with Final Destination that's seared into my mind every time I fly. So fucking beautiful. Most of my trips are business. I need to get life insurance. There he is! Brad frickin' Pitt. Oh, also, fun fact, the breath that was coming out when he was in his cave was actually Leonardo DiCaprio's breath from Titanic. So technically, Jack is breathing Leo's air when he's consulting his spirit animal. Oh, also, DVD. The magic of DVDs. There's 4 audio commentary tracks. Ed Norton, Brad Pitt, and David Fincher have one. Chuck Palahniuk has one. Check them out. They're incredible. No one should get away with a single outfit that Tyler wears, and yet Brad Pitt. What I love about Brad Pitt's character in this is it allows for the absolute cool that Hollywood demanded Brad Pitt play, but it's the character actor work that Brad Pitt exceeds at. So this is the ultimate combination of person and perception in a role about person and perception. Art imitating a human life. They have the same briefcase. And I love that Tyler, in our first meeting with him, knows, because he's the imaginary friend, exactly what's going on. That's the fun, like, Calvin and Hobbes play. So him chuckling at the briefcase, like, he is aware, of course, of what this all is. And seeing this, someone just talking to themselves on a plane is all too common. This was filmed immediately after American History X. You see how gaunt or just not healthy looking Ed Norton is? He dropped like 15 pounds of muscle he had just put on, and now he's a man that wants to be someone else. I shared this very recently, this clip here. I love this actor. He popped up all the time in the 90s in these kind of roles, and he's impeccable. And of course, now we're talking about, the building of consumerism, which then, culminates later in the explosion. But if you notice, a man is chasing after that car. That's my car! So Brad Pitt, from the beginning, as a concept, is the coolest thing in the world. And in actuality, that would have been Jack doing that in order to get home. 15th floor. I think this is the longest I've gone without seeing this movie, so I apologize for moments of watching. I'm going to try to stay engaged. My bad. And now we see actual pieces of the earlier, including that beautiful, beautiful actual yin-yang that I want as my coffee table, strewn about. It's only after we've lost everything that we're free to do anything. This sequence, 1999 special effects and CGI. Also, what a condo, 1,700 square feet, good for him. Again, sound design, bionic tones, slightly unnerving. The second choice for this role for Marla was Reese Witherspoon. And that would have been such a different career for her, such a different movie for us. But a lot of people like Winona Ryder went out for it, which is very much more her brand. Courtney Love, who is very much Marla Singer. But I think that Helena Bonham Carter was the right choice, and I love her performance here. All of the... We'll get to that, actually. I won't say that too early. Matt Damon... Oh, sorry. I keep getting ahead of myself. Let's stay where we are. Because no one's on the other line, Jack. So that would mean he called a non-number and then picked the phone back up when he heard it ring to have this conversation. Lou! As someone about to move, I need a sofa that's going to complete me. Another very broad concept is what is actually important to us? Why do we store so much information as consumers that is not relevant to any of our day-to-day tasks? I'm always fascinated by the more internet we're able to expand our mind with, the more we're connected to information, how we actually put in things that aren't necessary, but the less of us know how to fix cars, the next of it, I don't know how my cell phone works, all of these broad concepts, but we know what a duvet is. And consumerism, I feel like, has fed into the internet in an even bolder way, so The Social Network to me is a very much a, not sequel, but in the same vein as Fight Club, as the next mental cancer that's caused a lot of this. So many lines that are fortune cookie bullshit that are still true, but somehow are delivered with such sincerity. Is why Brad Pitt is Brad Pitt. So this entire movie only had a projected $50 million budget. If now you look at movies and superhero films and everything else, 50 million is chump change. It was actually went up to 67, but still, when you look at this film, what we used to be able to do with money. You'll notice that Tyler Durden almost never finishes a cigarette, like in the entirety of the film, because he's not really smoking. Ed Norton, on the other hand, is. So, this is one of the things I almost said earlier. All of these jobs are actually friends of Chuck Palahniuk's. These were all inspired by real situations. So, actual projectionists that snuck porn into family films, actual waiters that, like, white-collar jobs that... As someone who works in a movie theater, I was tempted by this forever. Those are real, or they used to be when we had film. Some films actually put those back in, like Tarantino adds those to his digital, but the cigarette burns was a signal, and it was easy to do this very task. And the frames do have the soundtrack on the side, so that's exactly how that does get delivered. For years, the rumor was the final cock of this film was Brad Pitt's, but it's never been confirmed. That also said, the opening of this film on the DVD and the Blu-ray, there's a Tyler Durden warning after the FBI warning, which is an incredible read if you can find it, or when you find it online. And again, these are all stories that Chuck Palahniuk talks about in his Stranger Than Fiction book about all the things that actually occur in nice restaurants. So be careful with your food. Treat people nicely. Also, the last name Durden is inspired by a real friend of Chuck, so this movie is full of real-life folk-ish. And Jim Ulls wrote the first draft of the screenplay, which Andrew Kevin Walker retooled. And this was actually a surprise and actually an earshot from Ed Norton to Brad Pitt, which was not organized or scripted. This was a real reaction to getting punched in the ear. I don't know if any people watching this do fight, but UFC, there's a certain rush to it. There's definitely adrenaline to fighting. Obviously, do it within expectations. Don't go out and fight with people in the street. But this rush is completely understandable. It's like runner's high, the endorphins from running. When you're in a fight, like, you're only focused on those moments, plus the endorphins of getting hit, the pain, your body triggering your pain, like, receptors to go off and heal. Like, there's a lot of truth in, like, the benefits of this, plus the escapism. I get it. Maybe not to this level, but I get it. Paper Street is an actual construction term when a construction development is in limbo. So it's like a filler name, like John Doe. So Paper Street Soap Company is, well, Tyler's not real. So it's a placeholder concept. So, my mom who's in the chat, I had a pink bathrobe for years. I only got rid of it recently because I had it in a place that flooded, but that pink bathrobe I wore myself for many a year after high school, college. I'd like another one. I need another pink bathrobe. With the coffee. Again, consumer. I literally want items from a movie about not letting things own you. I clearly understood the lessons, but didn't digest them. All of Paper Street does an incredible job of reprogramming the things we're used to. If you go camping, if you live, do reenactment camping, you live off the grid in any sort of way, you start to appreciate things differently. It's one of the reasons I go to Burning Man every year. For a week, you don't notice electricity being gone. And it's really important, I think, that people experience things like this. Again, not to this extreme. Movies are obviously the heightened reality, but getting out of the world is so important. Now we're forming Fight Club. This scene right here is actually a drunk Brad Pitt and Ed Norton hitting golf balls off the Crafty van on set. Actual contact with Crafty van, actual drunk actors playing around, which is the beauty of this film, the freedom. Brad Pitt and Ed Norton might have had to do 70 takes because of David Fincher, but they got to play. This movie's got such a playful quality to it. Drew Barrymore, a very good friend of Ed Norton, that was picked on purpose. This is probably my favorite scene in the film. Brad Pitt as Tyler on the bike while Jack, the concept, is born, which again gives you another giant hint as to the entirety of the film while giving you layers of science and violence. So now we're back to the visuals of the insomnia, but it's intentional because of fighting. Now we've escaped. So the vibrancy, even the crustiness, at least it's clear in the fights and violence. And then this is the other world, the white noise. To this day, this is 20 years later, the be better than your father commentary, and that's what I mean, like the toxic masculinity, the expectations of people in society. This is one of the sequences Brad Pitt said is like, this is the best performance, not the best, this was the ultimate character got to play when he did this right after Meet Joe Black, and he said Tyler Durden was the ultimate personification of the kinds of roles he wanted to play, and that sequence was one of them. Also, the very clear domestic partnership between the two of these men. There's a lot of obvious love between these two guys, and this film became really important for gay culture. This was in 1999. This was 7 years before Brokeback Mountain, but this was a mainstream film with a lot of homoerotic overtones, and Chuck Palahniuk himself being gay. Them talking about them being living together men. There's a lot of that in here. That an entire generation got exposed to that as a positive that I think has been really important for a lot of rights. Cornflower blue. This smile is another of my favorite moments in the film. Now, one thing the book differs from the movie is lines like that, you can swallow a pint of blood before you get sick. The entire book is once a chapter, you get these little factoids thrown at you. From the beginning, Project Mayhem is about the masses. It's about not being individualized. This movie is also about individualism and community. So it was on the tip of everyone's tongue. Tyler and I just gave it a name. They're not leaders. There's no leader of Fight Club. You're part of a community. And that's such an important aspect of the film, as well as an important aspect of culture that I think we've forgotten, especially Americans. Individualism is what's caused a lot of the problems we're dealing with today. Even in '99, David Fincher, Chuck Palahniuk, Jim Ulls, all these people knew that's part of the downfall from Generation X on. Our grandparents' generation, our parents' generations, all this individualism, working for yourself, versus community. Arguably, Fight Club, the community, is more beneficial than just being a selfish twat and taking care of yourself. Even with the violence, it's about finding your people. Yeah! Now, we've already seen Brad and Ed fight, but at no point has anyone intervened. They've kind of laughed at it. This is the first time we've seen other people interact in fights. These are the first real fights. I love him recruiting from his broken-ass job. This is probably bad advice to give, and I'm sorry to all the parents, but I do think it's important that everyone be in a fight before they die. I'd say you should do it in a controlled environment, sparring, martial arts, something like that, but I do recommend putting on some gloves, putting on some protective gear, getting in a fight once in your life, because it is important. And not like this. I'm not encouraging fighting like this. It's important. This is one of my favorite details. Tyler Durden and Jack are the same person. Right here, as they walk on the bus, he only pays one fare. So only one person enters that bus. Ching, that's it, one guy. Also, this is something that happens when you fight a lot. Like boxing, MMA, you do size people up, you do compare. Bodybuilders aren't fighters, fighters aren't always bodybuilders. Guy says, excuse me, one of them shoves by both of them. One guy. I think we're about to meet Angel Face. Also, you can't argue, I think even 20 years later, Brad Pitt's physique in Fight Club is the thing every guy wants. Like, it's not even fair, man. I'm too bulky for that, but everybody wants that. That's abs on abs, guy. See, this is where I think people misconstrue the film. The Fight Club's not about winning or losing. Like, it's not about the fighting. This is about the escapism that comes with fighting, about the community that comes with the fighting, about what it means to not be a consumer, not be an individualized piece of anything. This is Fight Club. To me. Also, all the theological, religious overtones. We all felt saved. That's very religious. Another one here, a big hint. They literally mirror each other in speech. Chuck Palahniuk has said that he didn't originally write the book with the intention of that being the twist at the end. He wasn't going to have a twist ending. He got 2/3 of the way through, realized that they traveled as one and they spoke as one, the two lead characters, then added the twist after he was 2/3 into writing the book, which is fascinating from a creative perspective. You'll also notice there's tons of over-the-shoulder shots of Jack. There isn't a single over-the-shoulder shot of Brad Pitt's character. He doesn't exist, so there's no frame to grab him. So the DP's even giving us hints from the beginning. The nunchucks in the background kills me every time. Oh wait, I think Sebastian. Sebastian's the name they use in Fight Club 2 as the narrator, not Cornelius. Sebastian and Cornelius are the two. What's fascinating about this performance from Helena Bonham Carter's perspective is the first time you watch it, you think she's like only worried about her because of how she acts towards Jack and Tyler separately, until you realize they're one guy and she's dealing with a guy that's lost it and is thinking he's two people. Changes the perspective. This whole sequence, the moans and the visuals, Brad Pitt and Helena Bonham Carter for 3 days recorded the moans and boning, and then they did mocap to capture that, which was super advanced technology for 1999. 3 days of this. Once again, that's one guy. See, like, this totally, once you know the twist, this totally changes the perspective on Marla. She's dealing with a crazy person while, like, she was being flirty about last night, and he's like, why are you, like, I love the performances in this film. They don't get enough credit. And this whole set of rules Tyler makes to protect his own identity, like the "you don't talk about me," the multiple promises, he's shaping the separateness. He's getting stronger throughout the film and becoming his own identity. We're about halfway in. This is still my favorite movie of all time. See, in headcanon, they've never met. But that line. Drugs. Also, as the sound design increases, along with the visual clarity and the film getting brighter as the film goes along, the eccentric sound design like really ramps up as we get into the second act of the film. Also, much like Matrix, also released in 1999, this film is very green, a very green-hued film. You don't see a lot of films that look green. There was a Fox executive. His name is Raymond Bongiovanni. And he was a Fox exec that found Fight Club and started this movie's process to getting made. And his dying wish was for this movie to get made, the novel to get turned into a film. So to Raymond Bongiovanni, thank you for getting this in Fox's hands and spreading the word as an executive. You helped this happen. That last line was originally "I want to have your abortion" and got switched, and they actually, in the edit, was that line was considered too crass, and then they reshot it and said, "All right, this is the new line," and Fox was like, "No, switch it back," but they kept the more perverse "I've been fucked like that since grade school." Again, 3 days of sound effects. Also, a lot of these prop magazines and things appear in other movies. Drew Barrymore appearing in this. There's a menu in Never Been Kissed that Ed Norton appears in, and they're like best friends, Drew and Ed Norton. The gloves in this scene are the detail work that just makes this movie sing. It's like when you watch Sixth Sense, there's so many times they literally tell you the twist, and it's look at 90s computers. In Rounders, which was 98, Ed Norton was originally supposed to smoke and refused, but since that Tyler Durden he doesn't finish a cigarette, if Ed Norton didn't smoke, then the twist wouldn't work as well. So Ed Norton agreed to smoke in this film, which he hasn't done in his career most often. So this is a unique experience because it adds to the twist, which I appreciate. Harold Stokes, Brad Pitt did not have ab implants for this film. He just got really shredded. That was a very funny rumor in the 90s, but his workout regimen is just incredible. And he has a very specific ab structure that you can see throughout his films, like Troy and everything else. He's just impossibly lean. He's got the work ethic, the diet, etc. Sorry, I haven't checked the live chat in a while. Miranda, we are still doing craft beer and comic books at 8:15, so we are still doing that tonight. Brad Pitt picking out pubes and giving the film's philosophies in the background while Ed Norton delivers his Oscar performance, and both parties are... This is the most Tyler Durden Ed Norton gets. And the three of them are never in the same room. So if Marla and Tyler are never in the same room, then Marla and Jack are in the same room. So that is because only two exist. There's also a theory that Marla doesn't exist, and this whole thing is another layer, but I personally don't believe in that conspiracy theory. Or not theory, but... I would say this is probably the most Tim Burton-y shot of the film, is this Cinderella sequence. And poor Marla has to deal with someone that's all about her, and then someone that's completely rejecting her at all times. So not knowing who she's talking to, whether it's the Sebastian Cornelius version or Tyler's version, and that poor woman. And again, the women in this film all represent redemption and peace and quiet. Even the breasts of Bob. And because of his upbringing, it's not abnormal. Live chat. There's a theory that Marla is also a figment of Ed Norton's imagination, since the three of them are never in the perspective at the same time. There's the idea that Marla also represents his feminine side, trying to be released as the masculine side through Tyler Durden. So Jack wanting the escape of the femininity through Marla and the masculinity through Tyler, maybe none of them are real and this all takes place. But personally, that's a bit of a stretch for me, because there are characters that interact with Marla, and there are characters that interact with both Marla and Jack, so I've never bought into that theory. But it's a cool concept. But to me, Tyler obviously doesn't exist, but Marla does to me. We're now at exactly 1 hour and 1 minute. Now. Stealing from the rich to give to the rich. Stealing liposuction fat to make soap is my shit. Ah, it's so gross. Oh god, the fat will land. See, now, hipsters wear the clothes that Tyler Durden wears now, but there's something about the fit, the cut, and the design that just... jealous. Always. Every viewing. Michael, so that, yeah, I see what you mean about that theory, because as an unreliable narrator, that does hold weight, that his interactions with people and her, but then it negates all of the detail work done in the book and the film of only having people interact with one of the two. So it weakens the creative decision of Tyler Durden if Marla doesn't exist, if that makes sense. Notice the sound design. It's gotten more piercing, the pace has changed, the BPMs have changed. It's both undercurrent and overcurrent. Also, I think premature enlightenment is much more common than actual enlightenment because, especially as Americans, we always look for shortcuts. So this sequence is hugely important for the broader concepts of, I think, what we should get out of it. Half doing religion, half doing any a walkabout experience. A lot of people try to escape the hard shit. I think we are made through hardship. So this whole sequence. Harold in the chat, the setup for the bomb is this sequence. In the book, they actually give an actual recipe for nitroglycerin through soap. They give an actual one that would work. In the movie, they decided since it was a mainstream film, they shouldn't give out a recipe for an explosive. So yes, the book sets it up in the same manner, but they do it with an actual recipe. So this is the sequence where I could see Matt Damon. I almost mentioned this earlier. Matt Damon was considered for the role of the narrator, and so was Sean Penn. And this sequence I see is like that Beautiful Mind, Good Will Hunting Matt Damon. But for me, there's a darkness to Ed Norton that really is important, and this is the sequence why I feel like it's only Ed Norton that can play this role. Sean Penn has the darkness, but not the approachability. Matt Damon has the approachability, not the darkness. So I think Ed Norton was the exact right man for this role, even though at this point he'd only done like Primal Fear and a few other things. Primal Fear, what a performance. So I'm so glad they went with Ed Norton here. The lighting here, where it's the flash on her face and the flash on his face, like the brightness here and the brightness here. This is one of the times, especially Michael McCarstle, I think that theory has some relevance, but again, it undermines a lot of the detail work later. So then it's more of just a visual good cinema storytelling. Because they literally use Marla as blackmail later in the film. They literally kidnap her for the sake of convincing Jack to, go through with something. That's why I think they couldn't kidnap someone that didn't exist in order to convince the other guy. Like they couldn't like remove a psyche physically in order to convince him. Like that wouldn't land. Bob! There is a graffiti in the background of the scene that says, I like myself, I like myself, I like myself, which is important to the book and also is another example of, well, this guy is really trying to find out who he is. It was also used in a lot of the promotional art. So this is the individualism versus community aspect. He was about to be like, yeah, actually, me and Tyler. But we didn't get that moment. We didn't get that detail. And now the myth of Tyler Durden grows as the not real man's power grows. So the bitch tits, the giant breasts of Bob, which had once been a place of closure, are now suffocating. So as we reach the second end of the end of the second act of the film, those exact things that were nurturing, the visual of it being crushing and oppressive, like I said, the femininity of this film is a fascinating overtone in a 98% male film. This speech is really cool because the details in it. A lot of people use this speech that were critics of the film, saying like, how would a guy as handsome as Brad Pitt being like, you want to be movie stars and rock gods and blah blah blah. They cast Brad Pitt because he represents the greatest of, he represents the ideal self, because he's not real. I feel like so many critics that disparage the film didn't get the twist in that of course they cast the ultimate man, Brad Pitt. So when he's saying we can't all be movie stars, it's ironic in the way that he is, of course, movie star Brad Pitt, who can accomplish all these very things. He represents these very things, and he's not real. The narrative structure of him being a concept and saying that concept can't exist is deep-seated dark irony. Oh hey, we got a real problem in our generation. Congratulations, guys. We still got the Great Depression that was our lives, though. So we got both. Thanks. Detail. And the Rockstar's line is when we meet the great Jared Leto, real life rock star, 30 Seconds to Mars. Oh, Lou. Oh. 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 The guy throwing up gets me every time. Usually I don't like cutting away from such intense moments, but the cutaway comedy of the guy throwing up gets me every time. So I've always wondered if that was the impetus in Jack fighting Lou to, you know, show that this is how you escape, is being beaten, and that encouraged this, or if when Jack was beaten by Lou, it inspired him to cast out his Project Mayhem members to get the same treatment because he just had that being saved. This sequence right here with the priest, you can actually watch the camera shakes because the cameraman starts laughing. Watch closely. When they cut back to him, the camera shakes because the cameraman thought it was so, like, it's one of my favorite little tiny details. Oh, I think they cleaned it up on Hulu. I think they centered it. On the Blu-ray and DVD, there's a shot of, like, the priest hitting back and the camera shaking slightly. Oh, they cleaned it up. And who better to lose a fight to than your boss and get corporate sponsorship for Fight Club? Harold, what do you mean by mirroring? Can you elaborate what your question is? I think that for me, the reason there's mirroring is because the boss represents everything that Jack was gonna become. So this is him fully escaping the reality of what he was turning his life into. The boss is with his, you know, grande latte enemas, with his cornflower blue ties, with all of these things. He represents the worst case scenario of what Jack could be. So the pop pop pop, the mirror this is Jack permanently leaving that world. This is him embracing Fight Club. This is him embracing Project Mayhem completely. He's beating up his old world by beating up himself. He's punching the boss representation of himself in the face while losing the fight to the boss. So the boss never lays his hand on him, but the concept of the boss that Jack would have become is who he's losing the fight to, in my opinion. I think that answers your question. Oh. Even the rubberized glass here with movie magic hurts me to watch. Harold, did that answer your question? Let me know. Also, I'm in the live chat more because I'm like fully in this movie, so I'm trying to make sure, but I'm with you guys. For some reason, when I was kicking my own ass, I thought of that time I first kicked my own ass. Every single clue in this film. The makeup designer for the grotesqueness, the blood and stuff. She watched early UFC fights because she never had to do realistic bruising. So this whole sequence, she had to watch real fights and like cage fights and backyard fights in order to shape the makeup in this, because that hadn't been done by her. So yeah, Harold, I agree with what you're saying. Like, Tyler got the location, Ed Norton got corporate sponsorship. That represents those things mirroring. But the boss thing, for me, with what Jack was becoming, is more important for the overall message of the film. But I don't disagree. The timing and the editing is not accidental. The guy that was the car wash guy becoming more apparent. All the members of Project Mayhem, you start to notice them like get more timing. The DP does such a great job like planting seeds of who's going to become more important, because now like, oh, that face looks familiar, oh, that face looks familiar, and now we've got Project Mayhem. There's a moment coming up where Max explode, which was a very famous campaign. I forget what year it came out, but the minute marker that moment happens is a very iconic ad campaign from Apple. So even down to the minute of editing, David Fincher has made this film a perfect animal. Remember Blockbusters and using magnets like an awful person? Let's see if I can find that. Apple. Nope. Okay, no luck finding that quickly on the internet. This sequence here with the Beatles, both Ed Norton and Brad Pitt, while they were filming this exact sequence, discovered they hated the concept of the Beatle, basically forcing a new generation to this. That was on the spot because they both hate the Volkswagen, because it's homogenizing another generation's revolution and trying to convince this generation, which was the 90s generation, to take their parents' revolution. So the 60s like flower power movement and all that stuff, they thought it was a cheesy rebranding of a concept. So that was an in-moment commentary on their philosophies that reflect the philosophies of their characters in a really interesting way. The missing monkeys found shaved every time. This right here, this minute marker is an iconic ad from the 80s that was for Apple computers. So in the edit, they made sure to time out when they exploded to the ad. This sequence is so brutal in the book. And that's very fucking true. Embrace your life, guys. Survival rate for everyone drops to 0. Another moment I think about all the time. Raymond K. Hessel, you truly... This man will have the best breakfast he's ever had. We gotta embrace every little detail. Every single one of us right now are 2 weeks from dying if we go to the grocery store and breathe in the wrong air. Like, we're all 2 weeks from anything. So we're all like an hour, like a plane could crash like Donnie Darko. But like, you gotta embrace life and appreciate things. So this is a gift he's giving him, and that's a dark gift, but it's a fucking gift. That was also another hint. It was Ed Norton's backpack and Brad planting the gun in it. Obviously, he'd know it's in his own backpack, but if he's not himself... Like, the gift of life Tyler just gave that guy. In the most fucked up way possible. Not condoning any of this. I'm just saying, like, how he would have felt that next morning. I mean, it's a dangerous film with those details. Like, he was never going to kill the guy. Playing with the frame here to mirror earlier slicing in framework and actually having the burns. And then, of course, at the end, that mirroring us watching the film as an experience. So the meta commentary of us watching a movie about someone that doesn't know they're crazy and then learns they're crazy while the narrator directs critically less, while watching a film about film splicing that then burns at the end. It's a lot of fun there as we go into the third act, or approach the third act. So this is a fun, if you're of the Marla's not real conversation moment. Again, I don't believe in that theory, but this is a really fun conversation that mirrors a lot of Tyler and his conversations. That she's subverting the Tyler expectation. But it's more fun with the just Tyler twist that Marla's like, wait, there's a glitch in the Matrix. Oh, wait, and then... And this also helps Tyler escape the moment that Jack realizes he's real by she just asked directly what was going on and everybody's dodging. The beginning of the Space Monkeys. And this is the schizophrenic version of Good Cop, Bad Cop, and it takes a bit. And this becomes a not the same as the Raymond K. Hessel experience, but breaking someone mentally to then break them into this. This is a very common brainwashing and all that jazz. So this is an interesting indoctrination technique to be part of a community like Project Mayhem. But this isn't far from, you know, like organized religion breaking people or any sort of cult breaking people. Like there's a lot of similar tactics to break a human mind. Brad Pitt's tooth being chipped, that was actually something Brad Pitt went to a dentist and got his tooth chipped and then got it fixed. So you'll notice now that we're deep into Fight Club in the third act, Brad Pitt's missing a chunk of his tooth, which he actually physically did. Now, Bob is the only source of sympathy that Jack has, so we're still remorseful for both the narrator and for Bob at this point in the film, even through all the aggressive things done. So you gotta keep liking someone for the plot to progress. And what's interesting is with catchphrases and logos and everything else, you're just as indoctrinated with, like, I'm loving it, and you know, company catchphrases, you hear them. It's just interesting to see someone do it with a megaphone, and it's the same, you know, get in your head there. So the consumerism commentary in the first two acts, now as we go into the third, like, you know, them embodying that in order to further their means with this community. Also, this is every college campus with people being like, this profound idea. So a lot of the actual profound ideas earlier being muddied by their repetition, by their lack of depth. Notice the lime green, you know, spray, like after the Project Mayhem, they're all like, you know, the ramifications of their wares. Everyone treating him like Tyler Durden. He being confused. Dude was so happy he caught that. That was such a proud actor moment. Yeah. The producer of this also produced Spider-Man and a bunch of other really iconic comic book films, Laura Ziskin. She got the rights for this film from Chuck Palahniuk for only $10,000 because he was an unknown writer. So $10K bought the rights to Fight Club from Laura Ziskin. Yeah, $10K for the rights, and this movie only had a $67 million budget. All of this, $67 million. Originally budgeted for 50. Insane for the scope of this film, like the scale of that budget. And it still didn't make money till Blu-ray or DVD. and we've learned, white collar work and all the details of, what these guys do, and now like building an army by, guerrilla warfare, like Vietnam, like you plant your people in these positions, and we already know those people are coming from those positions, so it's easy to infiltrate anything. That's what's fascinating about Project Mayhem versus Fight Club is the natural evolution of Fight Club turning into something of this scale, and that's how any community works. They're everywhere, and they just rise up, and I love how organic the plot flows. It's brilliant writing from Chuck and from the screenwriter Jim Ulls. This was the frame that was my first computer's desktop background. The Ralph Macchio looking guy and upside down Brad Pitt. Again, chip tooth. Great detail. And now the jealousy here, another, relationship moment between Brad and Ed Norton's characters. Him visually jealous of that relationship forming, while it's him who's forming that other relationship with Angel Face, and in that moment, Ed Norton didn't even exist. And Angel Face being beaten to a pulp because he did nothing wrong, but now Ed in Jack's mentality wanting to destroy something beautiful. How confusing that must have been for Angel Face, who sees him as like a friend, Sulu lover, whatever, but to get his ass kicked, like he wouldn't be prepared for that. He doesn't know what he's getting into. But also the message of destroying something beautiful is another broad concept for a Flash. And this, is supposed to be one thing. It's not about destruction. The tenets of Fight Club aren't about destruction. And again, that's one of the commentaries about the movie that's always driven me insane is it's not about these moments. The reason they're all wincing, the reason this is painful, the reason the audio's changed, they changed the sound design for all this whole sequence. They muted things. They upped the bionic tones. This isn't what the movie's about, and that's why this is... It drives me nuts that people think this is what the movie's about. The reason they're so shocked and repulsed is because that's not the point. Mixed martial arts is about the art of the martial arts. It's not about the hyper-violence, about the skill it takes to get that violence. Fight Club is about the message behind the escapism in all of these different things, not about the violence, and that's seen here. As well as the very funny panda metaphor. Jared Leto hasn't aged since this film. Angel Face has, but Jared Leto looks the same. The Lincoln Town Car, this iconic sequence coming up, this is the exact same car that was the one that was on fire earlier in the film. The toasted car is this car, as well as he said if he could fight anyone, he'd fight Lincoln. That's a Lincoln. We are not unique snowflakes. No individualisms. Community. What we've built. And that's so impossible to actually, like, I'm selfish, I want to grow things. It's so hard to actually get this level of awake or, woke is used in different connotations, but being awake, having an awakening, like all of those things, it's so hard to actually get there and actually be removed from the individualism. The tongue-in-cheek giggle that Brad Pitt has for so many lines of Tyler directed at Jack is pitch perfect. And what I love about this movie is it gives you all of these important messages while being an entertaining thriller of a movie, while being an action film, but it's doing all of the detail work of a Sixth Sense or something, but in a blockbuster scale at a not blockbuster budget. So this sequence, very famously, Jack is going to get out of the driver's side, even though Tyler's driving, which someone in the chat just mentioned. But Jack gets out of the other side of the car. But the movie's not about, like, looking for... It's a lot of the commentary we're doing, but the movie's not like a whodunit. It's not like Knives Out. You're not, like, trying to solve the mystery. And then when there's a twist, it's more exciting because you weren't looking for it. Like, it's a full-ass movie that happens to have a twist that makes it even better. And that's why it's my favorite. Dust Brothers score here. So good. Holt McCanley, who's one of the Project Mayhem guys in the backseat, who we've seen in a bunch of different sequences, is in most of David Fincher's work. He's in Mindhunters. He's in the upcoming Mank. He is such a good actor at being exactly the performance he always gives. So, Tyler pulling Jack out of the driver's seat because he was driving, and that is actually just Jack crawling out himself. And this is their Raymond K. Hessel moment. They just made themselves feel alive. They did it themselves by letting go, by full experience. Yeah, you had a near-life experience. So that is their way of Raymond K. Hesseling themselves. I also love in the time frame of this movie, we had the awakening and then we immediately lose Tyler. So he woke up and now he's gone, and that's how it's gonna go. This whole speech is directly from the book. I also wonder if we'll ever get to this kind of post-reality or post-modern reality, like, that he's describing, like how this is the worst, our generation's had it. I'm wondering, as things devolve, laying out strips of venison on superhighways, is it possible? Do we go back to being hunter-gatherers? I like technology a lot, not gonna lie. I can appreciate the messages in this film, but I would struggle. I'd be a better person for it, but I'm not. All the K. Hessels. And now everyone's Tyler Durden, so no one's Tyler Durden. So when no one's Tyler Durden, Jack's not Tyler Durden. And if Jack isn't Tyler Durden, who is he to these people? So he's invisible. This whole sequence. Again, not consumerism has been established, but now a lack of individualism, now a lack of identity. One of these folders makes an appearance later on. Remember this sequence. Remember these folders. Woo. So this for poor Marla, this is one of the moments that when you start to get, this was the biggest hint I think I had of the ending. But again, I was a kid, so I was not going to get it. But I knew something was afoot in the scene. And it's played so well as any like dramatic love story. Like her reaction is, why would he leave? The more stereotypical, like, why is he yelling at me? What have I done? But it's actually, who is this crazy person? And I can't imagine Marla's perspective. It'd be fun to see a cut of this movie from Marla's perspective, like the Memento chronological cut. There's no way to do it because there's not enough footage. But like Marla's experience of the film. Operation Latte Thunder. So this was originally supposed to be Starbucks, and Starbucks said they could use their images for all of the cups and everything, but they were like, you can't destroy a Starbucks. So Operation Latte Thunder became a general mom and pop or general not mom and pop coffee shop, a nondescript, problematic coffee shop that looks a lot like a Starbucks. Oh. Go. Again, when you lose control of the narrative, and his name's Robert Paulson. It's also fascinating just in life how much people want rules, how human beings want rules. So the rules, we don't have names, and then as soon as they're like, oh, in death we have names, you attach to this, and it becomes a credo this quickly. This, like, people in groups, it's fascinating how we operate like ants. All the flight receipts, there we go. Also, one of those examples of, like, you know, a different time. They're going to have to... This would be emails now and receipts and stuff differently. Detective Kevin. We're going to be Detectives Andrew and Walker, who make up Andrew Kevin Walker, who is the guy who did a lot of rewrites in this film. He also wrote 8mm, which was the movie David Fincher turned down to direct this one. 8mm is also an incredible film, Nicolas Cage movie. When you're chasing yourself and you tell no one to reveal who you are. Which also, this all mirrors Insomnia, which brings us back to the first act of the film, where we're experiencing, if you wake up in a tavern in a different place, could you wake up someone else? Chuck Palahniuk, you clever, clever man. They talked earlier about Brad Pitt saying his dad was setting up franchises by having children all over the world, and then Ed Norton just described what Brad Pitt was doing with Fight Clubs as setting up franchises. So he's jealousy of his father, also marrying his jealousy of Brad Pitt, also marrying his jealousy of wanting a family, of isolation, of everything. But just that one line of dialogue, setting up franchises, ties Brad to Jack's father, which is, you know, another metaphor for toxic masculinity and a lot of the other problems of the film. Addressed in the film, not within the film. Oh. Ugh. Brilliantly delivered. And now the casualness of people saying names is more, like, naturalized. Also, you know, him feeling and caring for her, developing. Tyler coming back looking like a space monkey. I also definitely rocked that look so many times in college onward, attempting to be as cool as Mr. Durden. But I do have a coat similar to that. It feels rad. Fake fur, I promise. Now, usually in flashback explanations, they don't handle them well. This one is such a different animal because you're learning through sound design as much as visuals, and this has been replicated many, many times. It's become more of a trope, but you actually feel the emotions. You're not just rewatching the same movie. You're watching the movie in a different frame. It's like a different cut. So this flashback, I don't feel like it falls into the trope of like, let's re-experience and explain. Like, it's more of a landing. It's more of the come down from a drug high. It's impactful. Also, this is why you cast Brad Pitt for these lines. The cigarette smoking on Tyler's side, not on Jack's side. I love how he's confused in the moment in the flashback. The waking up in the fetal position with the phone off while giving us the narrative of being a changeover. This movie does such a good job of being a narrative about narrative as well. Can you imagine not knowing yourself enough or being that removed from yourself enough to re-experience your own, like, deja vu like that? It's terrifying. Sorry, I'm like so in this movie. I'm with you. Any questions? I'm in the live chat. Contingencies on contingencies. And throughout the film, they built up the infiltration of the, infrastructure of the country. For the scope it gets to, it's such a believable film. Everyone is Tyler Durden. Don't eat the food. Oh, we've also noticed that now we're into the third act of the film. We have much more eye visibility. We have much more heart and connecting because eyes, window to the soul, especially in filmmaking. Now the lighting has shifted, so it's still a dark film, but we see into the darkness of both of their eyes. We've got a lot more closeness. We've also changed the framework. Now we're seeing over both of their shoulders because these are both real, tangible people. Like I said, you never see over Tyler Durden's shoulders, so now everyone's here. "7 Years in Tibet" is playing at the Olympic behind them. Brad Pitt, 7 Years in Tibet. Which is also what Mr. Robot does. Like, Mr. Robot took a lot of... I think Mr. Robot's first season is fantastic, but Mr. Robot took a lot from the Fight Club concept. But it delivered well. He's not the Christopher Reeve Superman transition, but I do like the attempt at Tyler Durdening. Now we have her falling down, full insanity sequence. Also, you'll notice we're back to the more muted, subdued. This movie's shot almost entirely under neon lights, and it's weirdly pretty. But it's also weirdly stale and sterile, which represents the world we're trying to escape. Arguably the most vibrant stuff is Paper Street and the whole experimental creativity section, but a lot of the movie is so muted, which is again why I think a 4K transfer is really pretty, because you can see the detail work and why they chose the lighting they did. You can notice the backgrounds and a lot of the signs are all Project Mayhem. Like they've been taken over and they're not actually ads for things. It's like the animal fertilizer things. Don't really have a lot to comment on here because we're just building tension, but it is well done, and again, the green hues, but we're building up to climax, so there's not much to say about this sequence. Oh, he's back! I love once the film accepts the crazy person unreality of Tyler Durden, the amount of fun they can play, and Brad Pitt getting to be full Tyler Durden, the full id and ego of mankind, just the full debauchery of Tyler Durden. And this is how they started to advertise the film. I remember the trailers for Fight Club are like this action movie with Brad Pitt being a crazy guy in front of nitroglycerin, which is not what the movie's about. I remember being in a Blockbuster, I think in like late '98, when they were playing. No, it would have been late '99. They were playing this because they had just gotten Fight Club, so maybe even early 2000s. Anyway, it doesn't matter. But they were playing the Fight Club trailer on loop, trying to get people to rent Fight Club on VHS or maybe DVD. But the trailer is like Brad Pitt being like, "I'm Brad Pitt," and like in front of the nitroglycerin, and it looked like a cheesy action movie, and that's not what this movie is. I'd love to talk to a psychologist about this, like the way the mind would see talking to yourself and whether or not thinking about the wrong wire would actually land that. That also might be a chapter later in the book. I haven't read that book in like 4 or 5 years, but the psychology in it fascinates me. That outfit, man. And the entire movie has been him fighting himself metaphorically, him fighting himself literally, and now him fighting himself to survive himself. This is how 2020's felt right here. This is 2020. Every time you get a little ahead. I do enjoy the ego of Tyler that he looks like he wants to look, he looks like guys want to look, he fucks like guys want to fuck, and like even in violence and even with the chipped tooth, he's checking in on himself, he's cleaning himself up. So even the Mona Lisa's falling apart, it's relative. Opening the film, and we're back. Flashback humor. Sorry, I hate when people do that. I didn't mean to say the line right before the line. I thought it was right before I said it. That joke. Top 3 jokes in the film because it's in voiceover, directed at us, the audience, while directed at his imaginary friend, because we don't know which one he is at that moment in his psyche, and it's about us watching him watch that experience. And as I've been saying throughout, the savior that is Marla, like when she's here, he gets strength, he finds calm, he's able to grow. That also is a fascinating commentary on, like, this isn't someone getting a safety net. He's not building a safety net. He's building the escapism, and that is its own interesting concept. Is I don't believe in destroying credit to make everything equal, but I do think that, like, you need some recklessness in order to have some freedom. So shades of Tyler are important, but he didn't invent some lame version of himself to taper himself. I think we all need a little Tyler Durden-ness, but not full Tyler Durden-ness. And this is the fun of this movie, is the visual editing and the visual stylings that's more exciting than reading in a book, the gun is in my hand, and the narrator looks down, the gun is now in his hand. It's much more exciting to see, like, you know, cinematically. We're almost to the point where the book goes in a completely, not completely, in a very different direction. Now playing towards the relationship, playing to their bond. Of course, Tyler's trying to... Now this is where it changes. This line is really important. The eyes open line. So he's not dreaming, he's aware, he's awake, he's just shot Tyler. He's accepted death as an escape. Now that's full Raymond K. Hessel, that's full near-life experience. That's every lesson that Tyler taught him. He's embraced it. He doesn't need Tyler anymore. He's rid himself of Tyler by being awakened, by having his full life experience. And what's that smell? Tyler's gone now because he killed that part of himself because he doesn't need him anymore. He doesn't need that fall safe. So he's learned his lessons. In the book, he wakes up talking to God. He wakes up at God's desk and he has a conversation with God. And it's a very different ending. I'm not going to go into any more elaborate next. You should read the book, but that is the gist of the ending. So it's literally all of this is movie new. And even Chuck Palahniuk has said that the movie is an improvement from the book. I like the book's ending, but I like this so much more. And the book's got a lot of different flourishes in it. Marla's mom is a huge part of the book. Marla's mom's actually where they first start taking the fat from. There's a lot more grossness. It's somehow more depraved, but the book's ending has a lot more of a broad religious overtone where God and Tyler have a conversation, and it doesn't allow for this, which I don't know if this ending would have worked in a book, whereas we need the cinema, we need to be invested in the characters that come with such lovable actors playing them. The where is my mind moment doesn't happen, and that's able to happen because of our love of Ed Norton, Helena Bonham Carter, their relationship, the coolness of Tyler Durden, that relationship. It's just, I don't think it would have landed in the book the same. And I also don't think that the book's ending would have landed in the movie the same. It would have undermined a lot of the movie's strengths. Only after we've lost everything are we free to do anything. So the very beginning of this movie painted this. We got all the clues. We got all the hints. That's how we escaped. We had to kill Tyler Durden. We all need to embrace a little bit of Tyler Durden, but he's a teacher. He's not you. You need to have some lessons and then be your own person. It's a great movie. I'm sorry, the third act I was so invested. I haven't seen this movie in too long, and I was in it, but I had a lot of fun with you guys. Where is my mind indeed? All right, this has been Fight Club. This has been a Patreon watch-along for Fight Club. I had so much fun commenting on a lot of my theories and journeys throughout this film. 1999 was 21 years ago, and this movie I think holds up even better than ever. It's my favorite film of all time. I highly recommend you read the book. This is a special edition. They don't usually look like this, but this is the book. I highly recommend you listen to all 4 audio commentaries. The one with Brad Pitt and Ed Norton and David Fincher is hilarious. The one with Chuck Palahniuk is super insightful. The below the line ones are great. There's a lot of great stuff on the DVD commentaries and the special features. And finally, highest recommendation. This book is by... it was published with Chuck Palahniuk's approval because he writes the foreword. Edited and read by Mercer Shorjart. I don't know. Look up that name. This book is so good. It's called You Do Not Talk About Fight Club. It deals with a lot of broad ideas and translations of what this is. Just like any religion, there's a lot of ways to interpret stuff. Just like Fight Club, there's a lot of ways to interpret it. I consider Project Mayhem its own cult, its own religion, interpreted with PhD candidates and reviewers alike. Again, I started reading this and didn't want to just basically read this at you, so I stopped reading it. Now that we've watched it, I'm diving into this book tomorrow because I wanna read some other people's ideas about interpretations of this film. Check out Chuck Palahniuk's other work. My favorite book of his isn't even Fight Club, it's Lullaby. It's a brilliant book about a culling song, and it's like if Harry Potter was an adult, fucked up Fight Club parable. Like more of the Fight Club tone, but with wizardry and darkness and magic. It's called Lullaby. It's brilliant. He's got a lot of great works. David Fincher, favorite director. Obviously them teaming up. is my shit. If you've never seen The Game, if you've never seen Seven, never seen, Curious Case of Benjamin Button, Girl with Dragon Tattoo, it's David Fincher. Check them out. Social Network, I think, is the best film of the 2010s. All right, those are their IMDb credentials. You know how to find more of their work. Highly recommended. This is peak Ed Norton and peak Helena Bonham Carter and peak Brad Pitt for me. I love this fucking movie. I am now going to take a half-hour break, and we're going to do comic books and craft beer, in which my friend Jenny Newman is coming over, and we're going to talk all about Mr. Miracle. We're also going to talk about how I don't say miracle like everybody else, I guess. And we're going to talk about, she's a wardrobe designer. She does costume design, and I think that is one of the slept-on things in the industry. So I'm going to be talking with her about comic books, about costuming, about life, and about creativity. It's going to be awesome, and we're going to talk about craft beer. Once again, Tavour has bestowed me with a code, COY10, C-O-Y-10. You get $10 off after you spend $25. So Tavour, T-A-V-O-U-R is an app. Check them out for COY10 to get $10 off. This beer was delicious, so a special thank you to Chuckanut Brewery for fueling my Fight Club watch, and a very, 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 very special thank you to Michael McCarstle. Everyone thank Michael McCarstle. He is the reason this very watch-along exists. He is in the Patreon tier that is the watch-along sponsorship, so thank Michael McCarstle. I had a great time teaming up, and this means it won't get taken down by Fox. Fox, I love you. How ironic is it, Michael? We literally did Deadpool and then Fight Club. Two independent, budgeted, giant tentpole films that did giant cult followings, both by 20th Century Fox. It would have been the same 20th Century Fox lawyer taking down this video if I didn't have those headphones on. The irony! So yes, this was a blast. I hope you guys had a good time. I'm going to quickly check out the live comments before signing off. So far, all the love is very, very appreciated. Hell yeah. All right, you guys are amazing. I really, really appreciate y'all. I'm going to read back through the live chat, make sure I didn't miss anything. In 30 minutes, in 28 minutes, comic books and craft beer. I'm going to start the stream right now so I can jump in soon. I will see you guys in half an hour. Michael McCarstle, thank you. This was a blast. Thank you for being a patron. If you guys want to be a patron, go over to patreon.com/Coy-Jandreau. All sorts of tiers. I do, you can see what I think of every single comic that I read that week. I rate them A, B, C, D, F. You can see what I thought of every bit of content, every show, every movie. I rate A, B, C, D, F every week. I do a Patreon-only podcast, only $10, and you get 4 episodes a month. That's all over there. You can sponsor watch-alongs. You can do have me review stuff. All sorts of stuff. You can be a producer. I could literally like give you name drops every episode. You help me produce content. We talk about all the stuff we're making. It's a bevy. It's a lot. Heather Long, the great Heather Long, is a producer of my content. She's fantastic. One of my Patreon tiers. All right, enough plugs. Y'all are amazing. This has concluded our 2.5-hour watch-along of Fight Club, Mischief, Mayhem, Soap, Watch-along. I love y'all. I'll see you in 30 minutes for comic books and craft beer talking Mr. Miracle. All right, see you guys. Boop.